Welcome to another episode of the Haven for Soul Care podcast. I'm excited today. We have Brian Seth with us. Is it Brian Seth Hurst or is it just
Yeah,
Brian?
it's Brian Seth Hurst.
Okay.
Oddly enough, my when I wrote a children's book with Olivia Newton-John in 1993, and my mother said, "Could you please use your middle name?"
Ah,
And so once something was published with my full name, Brian Seth Hurst, that was it.
okay, okay. Oh, that's exciting though. So you did co-authored a book with Olivia?
Yes, Olivia and I wrote a children's book called A Pigtail that
Okay.
was written in rhyme, and it was about recycling. And actually, it was the very first children's picture book on recycled paper. Olivia insisted on that. And so we
Oh.
waited for a paper that would hold the color. And in 1993, the book was released.
Oh, how exciting. How exciting. So I'm gonna get you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and who you are and the things that you do. You just told us something that is that is we on here we're not little people, but we don't get to meet people who work with famous people too often. So we're excited to have you and to hear
Well, thank
about.
you. I'm honored to be here. I actually grew up in a show business family. Both my parents were in the business. My dad was on television and radio in Philadelphia in the late 50s. He was the number one radio DJ, and my mother was actually the first woman producer, television producer in Philadelphia. So it was
Wow.
kind of in my DNA. And I've been living in LA for 40 years and I was in the television business and I held a position of, I was a vice chair at the Emmys at the Television Academy and chairman of the Producers Guild New Media Council. So I was in the business and part of my job was at the intersection of technology and content.
Mm,
So I was always about new media or digital media and then I started creating television shows, and the original book Whole, which is where I'm assume we're going to talk about that.
mm-hmm.
That book was the result of a real solid disappointment. I had a
Mm-hmm.
television show that we tried once, and then we tried again, and it crashed and burned. And I had given it my heart and soul. It was a reality show about how uh, the material that you receive from the media about elections isn't exactly what the candidates say. So we were going to send out a crew of millennials to actually give us their impressions of what was really going on in the campaigns. Anyway, didn't happen. I was sitting in a airport. I was living half the time in Western Illinois and the other half in Los Angeles. And after it crashed and burned, and I found out by an email. I was
Mm.
just sitting at the airport, Brianna, going, "What do I do now?" And I literally heard, and this is in the introduction to the original book, Whole, I literally heard, "Give us 30 days. At the end of 30 days, you will have a book, and the book will be called Whole." And I just listened and kind of took dictation on various essays and different subjects about how our beliefs affect our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, I kind of argued with that source a
Mm-hmm.
few
Mm-hmm.
times. I'm like, who's going to read this book? Where is it going to go? But at the end of 30 days, I actually did have a book, and it was
Wow.
called Whole. And then it was edited and it was released. And then we revised it 10 years later. And I was talking to a friend of mine Sally Olmsted, who's a public relations person, and she said, "Look, it's going to be really hard, even with a revised edition, to promote a book like this. You should do a workbook." And I was like, bing, like the universe was saying, do a workbook. And
Mm-hmm.
so I got 50 volunteers because the whole time I was working in the entertainment industry, I was also an intuitive doing readings for people. And I had done that since I was 25. So I had a long client list. I asked for 50 volunteers to do the workbook with me
Mm-hmm.
and give me the feedback. So I didn't want to send anybody over the edge. I wanted the exercises to be clear. I then had the book vetted by a couple of trusted therapists so that I wouldn't send anybody over the edge.
Yeah.
And that's where we are today. That's how the workbook happened.
Oh wow, wow. That is awesome. So tell me, what did you so you said that you got a message. And so I'm Christian, so I'm always gonna say God, God speaks to us. And so God gave you this message to write a book and he gave you the time that you would have it done by 30 days. Um and it's about how our belief, which this aligns so much with who I am and what I really do believe. Um, so what did you have to unlearn while writing this book?
That I have to unlearn. You know, a lot of what the was coming through in the book um, were things I think I had wrestled with or wondered about my entire life. Um, you know, how my life was influenced. I believe that the power lies in the present. I'm also a very faithful person. I know that there is more to life than we see.
Hmm.
Um, I have to be honest. I had been sexually abused as a kid, so trust was a major issue in my life.
Hmm.
So just sort of surrendering and trusting what was coming through and not trying to control it, even in the publishing of the book. Um, so I think what I had to unlearn was being a control freak, you know,
Yes.
because I would want control so I wouldn't get hurt. You
Hmm.
know, I would want to hold everyone out at a distance so that I would not be hurt.
Hmm.
And I think it was really interesting because I had the end of a 20-year relationship just a week before the book came out. And a friend of mine who had read the book ahead of time said to me, "Oh, you need to read chapter 9 or you need to read chapter 20 of your own book." And then she said to me, "You know, this book came for you, not from you." And it was true. You know, in doing recording the audiobook, which also was coming out January 7th alongside the workbook, recording the audiobook, I was like, I don't remember writing this stuff. And it was like, oh, this is really good material. This
Hmm.
is really important. And the interesting thing is that even though the original book was written, you know, over a decade ago, it holds up. These are universal principles about self-care and compassion and putting yourself in another person's shoes and understanding the need for stewardship with the environment. And we're talking over a decade ago.
Hmm.
And so it still holds up. And, you know, yes, I had to go back and read my own book.
Yeah.
It was quite educational. So as far as unlearning, I guess it was going with the flow, trusting what was coming through, trusting that the universe and God were working in my favor.
Hmm.
Um, I will say that I also had to learn that I have never been abandoned by God.
Yes, yes. That is if we don't learn nothing else, that is the key, that we've never been abandoned by God. God has never left us. Um, I love that you said that because I have a cheap throw in. I have another podcast coming out, and I'm telling my story. And one of the things that I have always known throughout my journey is that God has always been with me, even in the most hellish situations, right? God has always been there. So I think that is wonderful.
Like forged in fire.
Uh-huh.
Um, the one thing I have learned over 68 years of living is there is always some great positive lesson to be taken out of even the worst of circumstances.
Yes.
And learning what that is and being open to receiving that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you know, I've had to kind of get used to doing social media for the book. And one of the first little videos I did was, well, what do you do when the outcome of something is not what you wanted and you cannot change it?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer to that was, well, first you acknowledge your feelings about it. You can't stuff them.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you and journal about it or whatever it takes to acknowledge and soothe yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next step is even if you think you can't accept it, just be willing. It's like forgiveness. You might not be able to forgive somebody, but just be willing. And God can come in and help you take care of the rest. So
Yes.
just be willing to accept. And then the next step is, okay, how can I participate?
Mm-hmm.
What difference can I make? What is my purpose in this circumstance? And I
Mm-hmm.
realized after I did that video, that is kind of how I live my life, which is how do you accept what you think is the unacceptable, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's someone's death, whether it's a political outcome, whether it's not being loved in return or not having the things that you've given return back to you. How do you deal with those things? And
Hmm.
so, yeah, life's experience teaches you a lot if you're awake.
Yeah, yeah, if you're awake. Um, I love it. I want us to get more into the book because I really love the title of it, Whole, because I believe that, when Jesus came, he didn't come to just heal us, but he came to make us whole. We're not meant to just be healed, but to actually be whole individuals. And the thing that is my belief is the thing that is broken is our soul. And so it's the soul that is in need of repair and to be made whole.
So, there's a phrase in the book, actually, because who remembers what you write?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, but there's a phrase in the book, and I'm trying to find it right now, but it is like, hold on, I'll find it very quickly.
Okay, take your time.
Um, to know whole in the duality of your reality, you must know broken. To know broken is to recognize that you are, always have been, and always will be whole.
Mm.
So you start at whole. The perception is that you're broken,
Mm-hmm.
but I chose the title. Well, I didn't choose it. It kind of chose me.
Yeah.
But you have all these different identities that you present to the world. You're the daughter, you're the parent, you're the professional, you're branded by where you live, you're branded by your race, you're branded by your
Mm-hmm.
sexuality. You have all these different identities. And
Mm-hmm.
those pieces, if are not centered, I speak from my own experience. I don't ever want to say you should or you better to people. But if I wasn't centered, that fragmentation just is not holy. It's not fulfilling. It's not where love lives.
Right.
And so for me, it was like, wait, I have all these different pieces. And I had two completely separate professional identities. One was this entertainment executive, and the other one was this intuitive spiritual guy. And
Mm-hmm.
try as I might, I could not keep them separate.
Yeah.
When I was running for chair of the Television Academy, that whole other side of my life came out in quote opposition research. I still only lost by one vote, but it was like, wow, you really need to be honest about who you are and be this whole person and
Mm-hmm.
not worry about what other people think. You're
Mm-hmm.
not hurting anybody by who you are,
Mm-hmm.
who you are meant to be. And I'll tell you something, Brianna, it took me a while to land on my purpose, but I have it on my whiteboard, and it's to connect and engage authentically in collaboration with God and inspire.
Yes, I
That's it.
love it.
So if it's a book, and I also returned to live performing. I was an actor and performer last year after 40 years doing a
Wow.
one-man show, choosing the material carefully, writing the show to and whenever someone says, "Oh, I was so inspired," one, I know it's the energy of God coming through me, but I also know I've done my job.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you
Mm-hmm.
tell me you're inspired, it's like that's my purpose. I
Yeah.
I did it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
nailed it.
Yeah, yeah, that is good. That is good. I love it. Authentic to be authentic. Authentically you. Authentically who God created you to be, that vessel who is willing and able and obedient to, God and the way that he wants to use you. I love it. Because for some of us, and those who are listening, for some of us, it takes us a while to understand that we live in this world and there are labels that will attach themselves to us. Um, and if we don't remember, if we cannot get back to the center of who we were in the beginning before all these labels, we will live a life that is very unauthentic.
You know, there's a book that I have done called A Course in Miracles, and one of my favorite lines in that Course in Miracles that I'm paraphrasing is, "Who you think you are is a belief to be undone." It's like
Mm,
all the things you think you are, they might be given to you by other people. I mean,
yeah.
you're assigned, love my parents, but they didn't want me to be what I am.
Mm-hmm.
They had a whole different thing in mind for me that
Mm-hmm.
was to be a doctor or a lawyer or, because that was their thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, fortunately, I would say, you know how they say when you're ready, the right teachers show up?
Yes.
I've been really fortunate in the books that have shown up in my life and the mentors that have shown up in my life. And believe it or not, in the workbook, now the workbook is filled with exercises based on the original book that take you to a deeper level of self-knowledge. Well,
Mhm.
in the acknowledgments, Brianna, I actually thank some of the people who were absolutely horrible to me in my life.
Mm.
I'm grateful for what I learned from them. And a friend of mine said to me, "Oh my God, these people really hurt you. Why would you thank them?" And I said, "Exactly because of that. Because I grew and learned out of that. And as angry as I was, as hurt as I was, as afraid as I was, I still, no one could crush that light inside. That is always there. I think it's true for everybody."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I have to tell you something else. I worked on a project that was reentry for incarcerated individuals using virtual reality because that was a field I have worked in, still work in. And we were inside the prisons in level 4 maximum security. And as these gentlemen tell their story, the trauma that they went through, suddenly you don't see these people. And I'm telling you, these were people that are in jail because they killed other people.
Mm-hmm.
But you see the trauma and the humanity. And when I sat with these, I just cried the entire time because
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, the media wants you to believe this, but these are people that experienced real trauma in their lives and reacted to that trauma. And now, at least the people that were participating in this program, they were ready to deal with that trauma. And the woman who facilitates the program is an angel. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, even like the worst things that could happen, there's some, my breakup after 20 years, I laughed and I said, that was the best, worst thing that ever happened to me
Yeah.
because I learned so much from it. So, yes, I acknowledge those people
Mm-hmm.
for being teachers
Yeah.
because that's what they were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's a good, I have been often criticized for my ability to be hurt and then to bounce back and still love individuals as though, hey, I know what you've done, but I still love you. Um, you know, and people have said that, hey, there's got to be something wrong with you. And I had to wait till I got in my 40s to realize there's absolutely nothing wrong with me. This is how God created me. Now,
You know,
will I be someone to stand in front of a bullet again? No, absolutely not. But I would never be a person who walks around bitter because to be bitter is to be in prison.
yes, it consumes you. And the line of Marianne Williamson says, "I forgive you because I don't want to hurt." Or "I forgive you so I won't hurt." I can't remember that line either. And
Mm-hmm.
then, when Jesus was on the cross, he said, "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do." I
Yes.
feel that he knew they were afraid and
Mm-hmm.
that fear was dictating their response. And that was a
Mm-hmm.
reaction of fear. And that's
Yes.
why he asked for their forgiveness. The people that, if you dig down, there's that other line. There's so many great lines in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Hurt people, hurt people.
Uh-huh.
If you dig down, you go, "Oh my gosh, this person must have had something happen to them that either they haven't dealt with or they made a decision out of that experience." Like I, having been abused, made the decision no one can ever be trusted ever again.
Mm-hmm.
I have to take care of myself. No one can rescue me, which shuts out so many possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through trauma therapy to actually deal with that, to find myself again
Yes.
and to be able to forgive that person. And that was not easy,
Mm-hmm.
but I was dedicated to it because I wanted to heal. I wanted that light to shine again. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to wall myself off from the world anymore. But it took many years to come to that realization,
Yeah.
but I was willing. I think, your ability, what you're talking about is the combination of resilience and forgiveness
Mm-hmm.
that you are able to do. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people can't do that, and they want to be righteously angry.
Yes.
So if they look at you and they go, why are you forgiving these people? It doesn't give them permission, quote unquote, to be righteously angry anymore and to pursue their idea of justice.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
believe and I'm not saying people should get away with murder, not at all.
Right.
But I believe that humankind has our idea of justice,
Mm-hmm.
which changes from culture to society.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is divine justice,
Yes.
which is out of our hands. And it is that old vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think he was referring to vengeance. I
No.
think he was referring to what would be learned. And
Mm-hmm.
you live long enough and you go, wow, will humanity ever learn these lessons? Because it seems to be cyclical. And I
Yes.
often wonder what that is about. And it's honestly beyond me. But then I go back to my purpose and I go, okay, this is my job to
Mm-hmm.
connect, engage authentically, and inspire. I may not be able to end war in the Middle East, but as an individual, I can do my job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, I love I what I love the most is how God does things. When you talk about forgiveness and God's the way the way he defines justice and how he brings about justice. I remember I was upset with someone. Someone had deeply hurt me. And I just was so upset. And I was like, oh, I know God is not pleased with this person. And, and I was going down the road and I was like, God is going to. And just as plain as day, the Lord said to me, He said, you're angry. I'm not.
Mm,
Like, what? He said, you're angry. I'm not. He said, I told you not to go down that road. You disobeyed me. So you're angry and I'm not. I'm still working with them.
yeah.
Just like that. Just, when we can actually see, and I'm not saying every circumstance is our fault. I'm not saying any of that. But sometimes God, oftentimes, all the time, I'm gonna say all the time, God gives us certain warnings. And we choose to ignore those. And we think we know better. And we choose a path that should never be traveled. And we get the
But
result
even if you choose it, you've learned something.
you have always learned. And when I tell you I learned, listen the first time.
You know,
Listen.
I, I have to say it works in the goodness way as well. Like, like the prompt came from the PR person from Sally. You ought to do a workbook.
Mhm.
If I had thought, if I hadn't been like present and listening, I would have gone, oh no, that's a lot of work. And believe me, Brianna, it has been hard work. I declare that honestly, truthfully. It has been a challenge.
Yes.
It's taken almost 2.5 years just to get this to where it needs to be so that it benefits people.
Hmm.
But if I hadn't listened to her, I climbed a willow tree on a dare when I was a kid and
Uh-huh.
climbed all the way to the top because someone dared me to. But when I was at the top, they had to call the fire department to get me down.
Wow.
So the risk and taking the risk and the challenge, it's like if I had known this would have been such hard work, but the other side is just like in my performing life and my one-man show, I now have surrounded myself with people that I trust and that will give me an honest opinion. The woman that did the formatting and the typesetting, a woman named Andrea Ryder for the book, was sent from God.
Hmm.
Honestly,
Hmm. Hmm.
absolutely, has been a complete partner. All the changes that we are asked to make for different platforms that this workbook has to be on,
Hmm.
she is right there with me. She doesn't complain. I'm like, oh my God, this person is God sent, literally
Hmm.
God
Hmm.
sent.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
yeah, sometimes you have to be open heart, open mind, open hands in order
Yes.
to receive.
Yes. Yes. Um, and I'm still learning how to receive some of God's goodness because it seems to be overwhelming at times. And I'm like, Lord, is this really you? Are you really doing this? So um, I can honestly admit that I'm learning and learning to receive um, some of His goodness that He sends my way because I have had the opportunity in this season to, and in every episode or every season that we do the podcast, I've met wonderful people, but it's something about this season of the podcast that I have met people like you, and I mean it just so many people that are like God sent, because it's things that you guys are saying to me that is bringing about another level of healing, another
Mhm.
level of growth, and just the wisdom that I'm gleaning. I'm excited for what God is doing for me, little old me, and so I'm really appreciative. I'm appreciative of the work that you're doing. I'm appreciative that you listen to God, and you do as He tells you to do. It's simply amazing. And I can almost imagine how life has kind of flip-flopped for you, where you are experiencing more joy than you are more any sadness, or days where, those days that before the listening and obeying. For me, I know I had more down days than I did up days, but I have more up days than I have down days, even when days I wake up and it should be and it's like, nope, because I know. Like you said, there's something for me to get today. There's something for me to learn today. No matter what life may bring, I know that there's still something for me on this day. So yeah, yeah. I want you to do me a favor. And so the book, so you have the book and the workbook. Can they be brought together, or are they sold separately? Tell us how we can get them.
So they are sold separately.
Okay.
When I looked at bundling, uh, you know how there are rules in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and those rules, you as a single human being might not be able to change those rules. When you do a workbook, which is a fill-in thing, it's an entirely different class of publishing,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of retail outlets will not distribute a workbook because it's not returnable. There's a whole bunch of rules, right? So we said, okay, well, we have the book, the original book. Let's leave that. We did reformat it to match because Andrea did such a beautiful job on the workbook in
Mm-hmm.
designing and printing that now we went back and said, okay, well, let's make the original book match that. And
Mm-hmm.
so you have whole the book. On January 7th, you will have whole the audiobook, which will be available only at Audible, exclusively at Audible. And you will have the whole companion workbook, which I would send people to lulu.com to purchase because that was the easiest. They made it so easy for me to do that.
Mm-hmm.
The workbook can be used with the original book. So you can either listen to a chapter on Audible
Mm-hmm.
and then do the exercises,
Okay.
or you can read the book and then do the exercise that corresponds to that chapter. But as I have found, because we're doing focus groups,
Mm-hmm.
as I have found out from other people who just did the workbook alone, it is a valid and valuable experience as a standalone.
Oh, wow.
It does cover things that are in the book, but the exercises, there's some the way the format, and I have to look because you know how this is. So
Yeah.
what I have to look because every chapter has like several exercises. Everything begins with journaling. Each exercise
Mm-hmm.
chapter begins with journaling.
Mm-hmm.
But then there is there are exercises at the end. There are several exercises that deal with the chapter, but at the end there's always a real world application. Like how do you take this into the real world? So for example, there's a chapter called The Nature of You, which
Mm-hmm.
is dealing with your own nature. There's a chapter called, let's see if we can find that one, The Real World Application of the Nature of You. Okay. Real world application, listening to your nature. Say you have a day when you are feeling off. You may be feeling physically, mentally, or spiritually out of step with yourself. When life seems to have you, as opposed to you having life, you may just put up with it, power through it, or even do your best to ignore it. But could it be that in circumstances like this, your nature is trying to get your attention? Without being crude, you know what it's like to put off going to the restroom when your body tells you it's time. Putting it off is actually short-circuiting a natural process. You could say you're going against your own nature. As children, we learn to stop, look, and listen. Off feelings present you with the very same opportunity. Stop, breathe, and center yourself. Look, ask yourself how you feel or what is going on in the situation. Listen, tune in and feel in by asking, what is it that my nature requires right now? Take your first answer as your prompt and follow it. So for
Mhm.
every chapter, there is a real world exercise. One of the exercises involves simply learning the name of the people that are serving you. Like a waiter comes over, you ask their name and how they're doing, and because you humanize the experience and you're
Mhm.
actually having a real life exchange. So, in addition to the exercises that you do for yourself, in the workbook, and there's a lot of, writing and filling out things. And I've had people say in the advance release, I've had people's feedback saying, "Oh, well, I'm not filling in the workbook. I'm getting a separate notebook because I want to do the workbook once a year."
Oh, wow. What?
So it's like, yeah, because you're not going to be the same person the next
Yeah.
year. You will have learned a lot. Just like you said, you're learning a lot over this month,
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
season.
Yeah.
And so I like the fact that there are real world exercises that you can take in and apply because it changes the way you relate to the world. Because
Mm-hmm.
in my mind, it does present a more authentic self.
Yeah.
And when you're authentic, people respond. I'm convinced when you're showboating or putting on a stuff that people see through it on some level. They see through it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I can see people's behavior sometime and I go, boy, I don't know what they feel they need to prove or what kind of acknowledgement or applause they need or what they didn't get as a child. But what I see here is someone who's just afraid that they're not going to be loved.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's spot on. Yeah, that's spot on. Not be loved or be liked or be seen or be heard. And that's an awful way to feel. It's an
But
awful
if you
way to feel.
come from love, you don't have to go looking for it. That's another one of those phrases that works.
Mhm.
If you love yourself, you will be able, or if you're compassionate with yourself, sometimes I find myself lacking in compassion for others. And then I go, you know what? You are lacking compassion for yourself right now. This is an
Mhm.
opportunity to show yourself compassion. That will increase your capacity to show compassion to others.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's good. And so the workbook will be out January the 7th.
Yes, along with the audiobook.
Good.
Um, you know, I'm I'm honored, I'm pleased, I'm excited I'm emotional for this book to get into people's hands. Not because I want anybody to make me a guru or
Hmm.
not for any of those reasons, but for the reason that I know it will make a difference.
Yeah.
Even on the smallest level, it will make a difference. Even if people read it and they never decide to do a single exercise, it
Hmm.
will have made a difference.
Yeah.
The audiobook, again, an adventure to do, but the audiobook, when I was listening to the playbacks, something else jumped out at me every time. It was like
Hmm.
there was something new to be gained from it every time I heard it.
Hmm.
Because different things when you're listening will jump out because your attention will wander or will come back
Hmm.
so I believe that the book, the audiobook, and certainly the workbook are really valuable tools for and collaborators for discovering one's nature,
Yeah.
the indwelling God.
Hmm.
Um, I think that they can make a real difference.
Yeah, yeah. I know they can. I so relate to you. I so believe in you because a little secret of mine is that the same as you when you heard the voice about writing your book, I did the same when I wrote mine. And Timeline and everybody that helped get it to publication was all sent by God because I had absolutely no money. And so, it had to be God, nobody but God. So I understand. So I know when it's something from God that is life changing. And so I'm going to ask the audience, take the time, mark your calendars, January the 7th, um, and get the book whole. The original book is already in publication. And so you can get that from Amazon. And then the
Correct?
workbook, you're going to need the workbook. I'm going to ask you all to get the workbook January the 7th to go alongside. If you are on your journey of healing, and you're looking to become whole, this is the book that you want to get and you want to have it in hand. Again, Brian, thank you for,
Brianna, it has been my pleasure. I feel like a kindred spirit, like you're a lost sister that
yeah,
we've reunited.
yeah, I'm telling you, it's just amazing what God is doing, and so I am honored. I'm honored, and hopefully we will stay in contact because I would love to see what else God has in store for you and the great things because you're already doing so much now and making a difference. So I'm just excited what else the future holds for you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me. I'm honored and it was a absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. So, um, thank you, guys, for joining us. And until next time, remember that your healing and your wholeness is up to you. It's one decision away. Make the decision today to heal and to become whole. Until next time, we will see you.